Our next guest writes, public discourse is now a war of all against all for attention. Commerce is a war for attention. Social life is a war for attention. Parenting is a war for attention. And we are all feeling battle weary. This book is an attempt at finding peace. Joining us now is our 8 p.m. MSNBC friend, Chris Hayes. He's also host of the podcast, Why Is This Happening? And his brilliant new book, available tomorrow and in my hands right now, is The Siren's Call, How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource. I love this book.
That means
so
a lot.
It's one of those things that is, I was like, an inch away from thinking, or if I had the attention span to get to it, I would have said, wait a minute, what's happening to our attention span? And I think I've had some instinctive feelings about this, but to see it all laid out and then presenting attention as currency, presenting it as an objective, presenting it as an obvious Trumpian objective, a Musk objective, it's just fascinating to pull it all together.
Well, thank you. I mean, it was partly, I think, the product, the gestation of it is the work that we do, which is, you got to keep.
You're trying to get a little attention at 8 p.m.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like we're in the mines. Like that's what we got to do. So I think part of it too of just thinking about it as fundamentally as a resource. That attention is a resource. That it has value when it can be extracted and pooled in the aggregate, and that value of that resource has become kind of the defining resource of our time, both in private life, in commercial life, and certainly in public life, as we've seen that. And there's this moment, as this book's coming out, I'm writing it, and at the inauguration, it's like Donald Trump, who, of course, his entire public life is to dominate the attentional space. And then Elon Musk and Tim Cook and Zuckerberg and all the tech CEOs who monetize attention to make their fortunes, sitting in a row next to him, all in the same frame at the inauguration. Like, completely on the nose of what the commanding heights of both public and private commercial life are right now.
When did you start writing this? When did you start worrying about what was happening to our attention?
I think it's been happening over a long period of time.
Because it feels like you started last week.
Right.
And got it done. It's so au courant.
I've been thinking about it a long time. I was actually thinking about this the other day, that when we were covering ISIS back in 2013 or so, 2014, I was very aware of the fact that they were doing something intention to get our attention.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And there was a trap they had laid.
Right.
It was both newsworthy.
Yeah.
And also clearly a propaganda effort to capture mind share.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about the conundrum they had put us in. And that conundrum, obviously in less horrific and violent terms, is a conundrum that sort of stalks us out about so many things that are compelling attention almost against our will, and in so doing are taking away some fundamental part of our agency.
Yeah, so I had a small bore experience of that in this job. When the one thing I didn't think I could do, and I really couldn't do when I started this job, was cover school shootings.
That's
and
exactly,
I actually said the first time it came up, when I was new at this job, I said, I can't do it. You have to bring someone else in that night. Sadly, I'm now professional enough to be able to do that. But what I noticed when I was sitting at home was I noticed these pictures of the shooter and the name and all that. And the one contribution I had for myself when I started doing it was, I said, I'm never going to say the name.
Yes.
They did it to be on TV.
Right.
They did it for this attention. I'm not going to give them that with the name. And I realized through the book, I see what I was doing. I was trying to pull back some attention that was being demanded in the most evil way.
In the most evil way. The sort of mass shooter is the darkest, most nihilistic endpoint of exactly this kind of, desire to compel attention by any means necessary, and what you do with it. I mean, I talk about it, the troll, right? A much less horrific and dark version of this, who's just a jerk in public space, right? Yeah. That jerk in public space, you pay attention to him. If someone's screaming on the subway, if someone's being a bore at a party, right? Like that, but that negativity ends up being a shortcut to hack our attentional circuitry. And we see it with the troll in chief, right? The president and the co-president, this is both how they practice politics.
So your final chapter, like in all good medical textbooks about the cure, is is fascinating is what do we do about this? Let me tell you what I have intuitively done about it before I ever read the book. And I started doing this, I think, before Trump. And that is Saturdays and Sundays I consume absolutely nothing, zero. I have no idea what happens in the news on Saturday or Sunday. If I run into somebody, if I'm at a dinner Saturday night, hey, this thing happened, I go, I don't know. And literally, this is how big it has to be. The one Saturday news event that I can remember, or Sunday news event, I guess it was last year, was President Biden saying, I'm going to step out of the race. That got to me.
It managed to find you.
People in the stores in the little town I was in started running around. So that reached me. But that's how removed. Now,
why are you doing that?
I am doing that. I was doing that, I believe, because I simply intuitively felt there's just way too much vibration here. And I've got to, the RPMs are running too high on this. I can't look at Twitter. I can't look at, and so I just intuitively felt something was happening to me that you have now described to me exactly what was happening to me. And I kind of self-medicated that way so that, as the staff here can tell you, there's a lot of stuff I have to be informed about on Monday afternoons that they thought I would have known, by Saturday morning. But that's one method that by one person.
And partly, I think what, I write about this in the book, like being alone with our own thoughts. Is a really important part of the human condition, of being alive. And we have become acclimated to ever more diversion. Blaise Pascal is writing, in the 17th century. He says, think about the king. The king has every diversion available to him, and yet he needs ever more, right? So that thing that you're doing yourself, which is like, I'm going to preserve some space for my own inner life, is actually like crucial to being alive. It's also crucial to focus. I mean, that's the other thing. I think we all feel that in a distracted age, focus is power, right? And we're fighting, particularly in this first week, I mean, it's to focus, right? And that's another thing I think we're learning to kind of hold on to.
And I've also become a much more intense, long-form reader of history. Like, take big, ponderous history books and just read them for hours on end. And I have real trouble putting them down, whereas I'd say decades ago, certainly in college, I would have had trouble picking them up. But there's something therapeutic, and I feel completely removed from this and doing it.
Yeah, I have the delight of writing the book has been forcing me to go back into long texts and really engage with them.